I shouldn't even be telling this. But it's been sitting on me for weeks now, tugging at my mind at the wrong moments. At work, in the shower, even when I'm supposed to be laughing with friends. It started at the most ordinary place imaginable, my best friend's family's auto repair shop. I was just supposed to swing by, grab him, and head out. Nothing more. But she was there. His sister. She's in her mid-40s, though that sounds too clinical, too much like a number on a form. Seeing her in person, standing behind the counter with a clipboard tucked under one arm, she didn't look like someone in her mid-40s. She looked steady, the kind of steady you notice only because you're not. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, a pencil stuck through it like she'd needed both hands free in a hurry. Grease-stained invoices lay scattered across the counter, yet her posture was calm, precise. My friend wasn't around, so it was just me and her in that cavernous garage that smelled of oil and hot rubber. "Need something?" she asked, without looking up at first. Her voice was even, clipped, but not unkind. I remember fumbling with my words, saying something too fast. "Yeah. Just looking for," before she finally glanced at me. That glance froze me. Dark, intelligent eyes, but softened around the edges, like she'd already carried more than most people should. She smiled a little, or maybe it wasn't a smile at all, maybe just her lips pressing together as if she was deciding whether or not I was worth her time. "He'll be back in a few minutes," she said. The silence that followed was unbearable. I leaned on the counter like I belonged there, even though I didn't. The clock ticked above us. Outside, a truck rumbled past. Neither of us spoke, and I knew she was comfortable in that quiet while I was unraveling in it. I noticed the way she tapped her nails lightly against the clipboard, a small rhythm, unconscious. And then, without thinking, I offered, "Want me to organize those invoices for you? I've got nothing else to do while I wait." She looked at me, properly this time. "You know how to read a mechanic's handwriting?" I laughed, too quickly, and shook my head. "Guess not." But instead of brushing me off, she set the clipboard down in front of me. "Here, try." It was such a simple thing, sliding paper toward me, but my chest tightened. Our hands didn't touch, not really, but they came close enough that I felt the air shift. I caught the faint scent of her perfume under the stronger smell of engine oil. Something floral, unexpected in this setting. I tried to focus on the scrawled notes in front of me, but I could feel her watching. Not openly, not for long. Just small flickers when she thought I wasn't looking. When my best friend finally came back through the side door, joking about how long he'd taken, I handed her the clipboard like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. As we walked out, I glanced back once. She was already busy again, head bent, hair falling out of its knot. Still, there'd been a pause, one small moment between us, and I couldn't let it go. I can't stop replaying the weight of that look, the way her hand hovered just a breath from mine. A week later, I found myself back at the shop, not for my friend this time, but because my car had started making a sound that I couldn't ignore. A sharp, grinding whine every time I braked. She was there again. Same counter. Same bun that seemed to be holding on for dear life. But today, there were faint shadows under her eyes, like she hadn't slept well. "You again?" she said, eyebrows lifting. Not a joke, not quite annoyed either. Just guarded. "Guess I trust this place," I answered, a little too quickly. She exhaled through her nose. Almost a laugh, but not quite. She waved me toward the garage bay. "Fine. Park it over there. I'll take a look." I expected she'd hand me off to one of the mechanics, but instead, she pulled on a pair of gloves and slid the hood open herself. I hovered nearby, trying not to look obvious. There was something about the way she moved, precise, efficient, but her hands gave her away. When she tugged at a stubborn bolt, I saw the faint tremor in her wrist. When she paused to push hair back from her face with the back of her arm, her breath came quicker than she wanted me to notice. "You don't usually do this kind of work, do you?" I asked. She shot me a glance. "What makes you say that? You're careful. The guys here are all brute force. You actually think about it." For a moment, something flickered across her face. Pride, maybe. Then it was gone. She tightened her jaw, returned to the engine. "You talk too much." Maybe I did. But the silence after that felt sharper. I couldn't stop noticing the details The oil streak across her cheekbone, the way her shoulders slumped when she thought no one was watching, the small sigh she let slip when the bolt finally loosened. Rough day, I asked before I could stop myself. Her hand stilled. She didn't look at me. Every day's rough. There it was. Not a complaint. Not self-pity. Just fact. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words caught. Instead, I bent down, picked up a wrench that had rolled near my foot, and handed it to her. Our fingers brushed, barely. A spark, quick and stupid, but I couldn't ignore it. She hesitated, just long enough for me to notice, before taking it from me. Her eyes lingered on mine half a second too long. Then she looked away. The car problem was simple, nothing dramatic. She fixed it faster than I expected, and by the time my friend wandered in, greasy-handed and laughing about something on his phone, she had already stripped her gloves off and was wiping down the counter again, walls back up. But as I drove away, the image wouldn't leave me. Her hands, trembling for just a second, and the way her gaze faltered when I caught it. That half-second lives with me still, soft, quiet, but impossible to shake. The storm had started in the late afternoon, heavy rain pounding the roof of the shop until conversation had to fight against the noise. My friend had promised he'd be back after grabbing dinner, but an hour passed, then another. His text trickled in, still out. Don't wait up. So it was me, her, and the sound of water lashing the windows. She'd stayed behind to balance the books, papers spread across the counter. I lingered longer than I needed to, pretending I was double-checking my brakes again, though the car was fine. Truth was, I couldn't bring myself to leave. Storm's bad, I said, mostly to cut through the silence. She didn't look up, pen scratching across the page. But I saw the crease between her brows, deeper than usual. You could have gone home, I added. And leave the place unlocked? Not happening. Something in her tone said she wasn't really talking about the shop. I sat on a stool nearby, watching her work. The fluorescent light above flickered once, humming low, and I caught the way her shoulders slumped for just a second before she straightened again. You ever think about not doing all this yourself? I asked quietly. She froze mid-scribble. Looked up. What do you mean? I mean, you carry a lot. This place, your family. Don't you ever want someone else to? I stopped. The words hung there, too heavy, too close to something I wasn't ready to admit. Her eyes searched mine for a beat, sharp but uncertain, before she looked down again. Want doesn't matter. Her voice cracked just enough to betray her. You do what you have to. The rain battered the roof harder, filling the silence. For reasons I couldn't explain, I reached across the counter and pushed her coffee mug closer. She glanced at it, then at me. Our eyes held longer than they should have. My chest tightened. The air between us shifted, quiet, electric. I wanted to say something reckless, something that had been growing louder in my head since that first day. Instead, I just breathed her in, the faint mix of coffee and rain-soaked air. Then her phone rang. She flinched, snatching it up so fast she nearly knocked over the mug. A man's name lit up the screen, one I didn't recognize. She stared at it too long before answering. Her voice softened, low and careful. Yeah, I'm still here. No, don't come by. It's fine. I turned away, pretending to study a poster on the wall, but my pulse was hammering. Whoever he was, her tone said enough. A history I had no place in, walls I wasn't supposed to touch. When she finally hung up, she set the phone down harder than she meant to. Neither of us spoke. I stood, almost out of instinct, and stepped closer to the counter. Too close. She didn't back away. Her breath hitched, barely audible. My hand twitched, wanting to close the distance, but I stopped myself. The storm roared outside, and between us, nothing happened. Not yet. The storm had passed, but the quiet it left behind was heavier than the rain. The shop felt hollow, every tick of the wall clock too sharp, every shuffle of paper too loud. We hadn't spoken since her phone call. She'd gone back to her bookkeeping, but her pen hadn't touched the page in minutes. I sat on the stool across from her, hands in my lap, pretending I wasn't watching her shoulders rise and fall in uneven breaths. Finally, she set the pen down and looked at me. Really looked. What are we doing? She asked, voice low, like she was afraid the walls might answer. My throat tightened. I opened my mouth, closed it again. I wanted to give her something steady, something that made sense. Instead, all I managed was, I don't know. Her eyes flickered, frustration, or maybe relief. I couldn't tell. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms like a shield. You shouldn't even be here. I know. You're too young. I know that too. Her laugh was bitter, short. Then why do you keep? She didn't finish, but her hand lifted and dropped, like she was trying to name the space between us and couldn't. Because I can't stop thinking about it, I said, before I could stop myself. The words landed between us, sharp and irreversible. Her mouth parted, but no reply came. She just sat there, eyes fixed on me, as if searching for the lie and not finding one. The silence stretched. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the corner, the drip of water from a gutter outside. I thought she might throw me out. I almost wanted her to. But instead, she whispered, "You don't understand what this would mean." "Then tell me," I said. Her gaze fell to the counter, to her own hands. She pressed her palms flat against the surface, as if bracing herself. "It would mean undoing everything I've built, losing the one thing I can still control. And you." She stopped, swallowed hard. "You'd regret it before it even began." I leaned forward without thinking, elbows on the counter. "You think so little of me." "No," she said sharply, meeting my eyes again. The intensity there startled me. "I think too much of you." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt them settle in my chest, heavy and burning. Neither of us moved. Neither of us dared to. The truth had been spoken, and the room was smaller for it. Her eyes softened then, just slightly, and for the first time I saw not just strength, but the fracture lines beneath it. She looked down, almost to herself, and said in a voice so quiet I barely caught it, "I can't survive another mistake." It was late, near closing at a corner bookstore I sometimes wandered into when I didn't want to go home yet. The place smelled of old paper and dust, with one flickering lamp over the register. I didn't expect her to be there, but there she was, alone in an aisle, fingers brushing the spines of books like she was searching for something specific and couldn't find it. She noticed me before I spoke. Her lips pressed together, like she wasn't sure whether to smile or sigh. "You again," she said softly, not the same guarded tone as before. More tired. I walked closer, careful not to crowd her. "Didn't think I'd run into you here." She held a book in her hands, turning it over without really looking at it. "Sometimes I come here when I can't sleep." I nodded. "Me too." The silence stretched, softer than in the shop, wrapped in the hum of the old ceiling fan. She set the book back on the shelf, and her hand lingered there, trembling almost imperceptibly. Then she said it, out of nowhere. "You remind me of him." My chest tightened. "Who?" She exhaled slow. "My husband." A pause. "Ex-husband. He was younger than me too. Not by much, but still younger." I didn't know what to say, so I stayed still. "He used to lean against things the way you do," she went on, eyes unfocused now, somewhere far away. "Always trying to look casual, even when he was restless inside." She gave the faintest smile, then it collapsed. "He's gone. Car accident. Years ago." The bookstore was too quiet after that. Even the fan seemed to fade. I wanted to step closer, but my feet felt nailed to the floor. All I could do was watch her fingers trace the worn wood of the shelf, small circles, like she needed something solid to hold on to. "I shouldn't have told you that," she whispered. "I'm glad you did," I said, and my voice sounded rough, foreign to me. She finally turned to me, and the look in her eyes was something I'd never seen from her before, unguarded, raw, vulnerable in a way that made my stomach twist, because it wasn't power, wasn't control. It was grief, fresh even after all this time. I wanted to reach out, to take her hand, but I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I said the only thing I could manage. "You don't have to carry all of that alone." Her breath caught, and she blinked like she hadn't expected those words. She looked at me too long, and for a moment it felt like the air itself leaned in, waiting. But then she stepped back, shaking her head, putting the wall between us again. Only, this time, I could still feel the crack she'd left open. It happened on a night that shouldn't have meant anything. A Tuesday, quiet, The shop closed early because the power had gone out in half the neighborhood. My friend had left hours before, muttering about grabbing drinks with coworkers. I stayed behind under the excuse of helping her lock up, though we both knew that wasn't the reason. Candles lit the office in a wavering amber glow. Without the harsh fluorescent hum, the space felt smaller, softer, like it belonged to some other world. She sat at the counter with her hands folded, the light tracing the lines around her eyes. She looked tired but less guarded, as if the darkness had lowered her defenses along with the day. I leaned against the wall, listening to the faint rain outside. We didn't speak for a long time. It wasn't an awkward silence. It was heavy, yes, but not unbearable. The kind of silence that asks you to sit with it, to stop filling it with noise. Finally, she said, "You shouldn't wait for me." I frowned. "Who says I am?" Her eyes lifted, meeting mine. "Because I know the look. The way you hover. The way you hesitate, then don't." She shook her head. "It's too familiar." I swallowed. "And if I told you it wasn't something I could turn off?" Her hands gripped together tighter. She let out a long breath, then whispered, "Then I'd tell you that scares me more than anything." We let that sit between us. The candle flame wavered as if listening. "I don't want to hurt you," she added. "You're not," I said quickly. "You're the first person in a long time who makes me feel like I'm not just passing through my own life." She looked down at her hands, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw tears threatening at the edges of her lashes. She didn't wipe them away. She just let them fall, small, quiet, unannounced. Something in me broke open. I moved closer, slow, giving her every chance to pull back. She didn't. When I reached the counter, I didn't touch her right away. I just stood there until she finally shifted, turning her hand palm up. It was the smallest invitation, but it was everything. I slid my hand into hers. Her fingers tightened, rough from work, warm and trembling. That was all. No words. No declarations. Just the truth of skin against skin in a room where nothing else mattered. We sat like that for what felt like hours, letting the silence hold what we couldn't say. And when she leaned her forehead gently against mine, just that, no more, it felt less like a beginning or an ending, and more like a surrender. No fireworks. No promises. Just two people who could no longer pretend. The quiet itself became the answer. Looking back now, it still feels unreal, not in the sense of some fairy tale, but in how quiet it all was. No one else saw it. No one else even knew. Just two people who stumbled into each other's gravity when neither of us expected to. That night at the shop, the candles, the silence, the way her hand finally fit into mine, it didn't feel like some grand beginning. It felt like recognition, like two lives that had been circling in separate orbits suddenly collided, and for once, we stopped pretending we were fine drifting alone. I think about her often, not with the kind of obsession that keeps you up all night, but with the kind of steady warmth that reshapes you without you realizing. She changed the way I see people, how much weight they carry without showing it, how strength and vulnerability can live in the same breath. She once told me she couldn't survive another mistake. I used to replay that line in my head, wondering if being with me was the mistake she meant. But over time I've come to believe it wasn't about me at all. It was about her learning to forgive herself for things she'd been carrying too long. And me? I learned that love, or whatever you want to call it, doesn't have to be fireworks and confessions. Sometimes it's a quiet room, two people breathing the same air, and the smallest gesture that says I see you. Did we become something official? No, that wasn't the point. We didn't need labels. What we had was enough. The silence, the glances, the lessons tucked into the spaces between our words. And maybe that's what love really is. Not ownership, not promises, but presence. I still remember the last time I saw her. She pressed a set of receipts into my hand, the kind of ordinary moment that meant nothing to anyone else. But her thumb lingered against my palm, and she held my gaze just long enough to tell me everything without a single word. That was all. That was enough. If you ask me what changed, everything did, in ways no one else could see. I carried her steadiness into the rest of my life. She carried my unspoken faith that she was worth more than her regrets. We didn't save each other, not exactly. But we gave each other something real to hold, if only for a while. And if that's all we ever had, it was still more than I ever expected. Sparkles, if this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?